Upgrade your game day with Team Toyota. Headed to the practice field or the stadium, we have a great selection of new trucks and SUVs to choose from. And with our lineup of over 200 certified used Toyotas, you can find the right fit for you or for your budget with 75 used cars under $20K. Don't get stuck on the sidelines. Our service centers are here to get you back on the road in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations at Princeton, Langhorne, or Glen Mills, or online at teamtoyota.net. Happy Monday, baseball fans. This is the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. I'm Spencer McKercher, up in Philadelphia once again. Corey Seidman down in Clearwater, Florida. Core, I don't know if you heard, but it's been windy, cold, and chilly. We had 60-mile-per-hour gusts down there. How's the weather down in Clearwater?
Couldn't be more beautiful. It's about, like 8 degrees colder than it was when I got down here last week. It was like 78 and sunny when I first landed, but it's still beautiful, breezy day today. And this was Monday was the first day of Phillies full squad workouts. And there were a ton of fans here at Baycare Ballpark and at the Carpenter Complex watching the Phillies take batting practice on the main field, on the back fields, some defensive drills. Got to see Zach Wheeler and Christopher Sanchez pitch. Today was like, it really felt like almost like the start of the new baseball year, because you have all this excitement from fans. You have the players who are just walking around casually. That's like the beauty of camp, is that you have guys who don't feel all the pressure and scrutiny and intensity of the regular season. So everybody's a little bit more laid back, and fans can have actual interactions with players and get autographs. It's always a great time down here in Clearwater. The
excitement's definitely there, dude. And as you just mentioned, yeah, if you haven't been down there in Clearwater, it's so awesome, especially this time before the games kind of start. Just seeing the guys up close, you can almost feel like you can reach out and touch them and hang out. And they're always so gracious with autographs and taking times to say hi to the fans. But the bigger things, as you mentioned, dude, today, first day of full squad workouts. A lot of things happened over the weekend. We last talked to you guys on Thursday. And since then, we've seen everybody kind of show up, and all the big names have talked. Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper. And I guess the big topic that we'll start with right now is the lineup. All these guys kind of had comments about the lineup. Rob Thompson on last Wednesday, made comments about the lineup. He made comments about the lineup on his end of the season press conference as well. Yeah, man, let's take it from there. I guess what are your reactions to Kyle Schwarber's comments, Rob Thompson's comments on a potential new batting order?
So Kyle Schwarber, this is his 4th year with the Phillies, and in the first 3 years, he's led off in 85% of his plate appearances, and he's had a lot of success. I mean, the Phillies have won many games. He's hit 37 leadoff home runs. The Phillies have gone 28-9 when he does, and it's a big tone setter to have a guy who can pop one at the top of the order. He also led the National League in walks last season, so that's the other big skill set you look at from a leadoff hitter. But Rob Thompson, in trying to figure out ways to maybe propel this offense a little bit forward, said 3 different times this offseason that he's considered making a change to the top of the Phillies lineup. And if he does move Schwarber down, Trey Turner would be the guy who moves into the leadoff spot. If that happens, you're probably looking at a lineup of like Turner 1, Harper 2, and then it could either go Bohm 3 and Schwarber 4, or vice versa. If you bat Harper 2 and Schwarber 3, you'd have back-to-back lefties. They both really handled lefties last season. For Harper, that's been more of a career-long trend, whereas for Schwarber, last season was the first year that he hit lefties at that clip. I think it was like 260 or something with power. But with Schwarber, he's hit 143 homers as a Philly, and 97 have been solo shots. So that's 2 out of every 3 home runs he's hit that's only driven in himself. The league average of solo home runs is 57%. So like 57% of home runs are solos, whereas for Schwarber, that's been 67%. And you start to think of, okay, what if he's following Bryce Harper instead of following Johan Rojas? What if he's following a guy with a 395 on base percentage as opposed to a guy with a 295 on base percentage? That's plenty more RBI opportunities. And I think that's why Thompson's going to experiment with this. Schwarber has said that he considers himself player number 12. He doesn't care if he's being written into the lineup at the top or the middle. And Bryce Harper, he has hit 3rd most of his career. He's also hit 2. He's at 4. The one place he does not want to hit is leadoff, because Harper's, he would love the extra plate appearances, but his thing is he values too much seeing pitches out of the pitcher while he's in the on-deck circle, while he's in the hole. So he wants to, be able to see more of the pitcher, and you lose that ability when you lead off. So Harper seems like he'd be comfortable 2, 3, or 4, but not 1.
Yeah. And I think you and I kind of talked before the show too. It's not like a Lindor or Shohei Ohtani with Bryce. You know, he kind of wants those guys on base, and those numbers about Schwarber, man, those are crazy. I know it's felt like a lot of leadoff home runs. What he had 15 leadoff home runs last year, which broke the record. It's crazy, yeah, because you know even when he gets up and that bottom of the lineup has struggled, there's not usually a guys on base as the game goes on. So what a
the
wild
flip side, though, you know, the flip side, I guess, would be, you remember that game in Toronto late last season when Schwarber like won the game by himself? Was it like 3 homers and I don't know, 9 or 10 RBIs? But like in that game, that's the value of leading him off, is that like he was your most dangerous hitter that day, that week, that month. And he was getting more plate. Like, imagine if he doesn't come up in that spot. I guess the thing is, Trey Turner's still a very good hitter, so he'd still be having a real quality option up there. But with Turner, the Phillies, ideally, you know, Turner is the player he was prior to 2024 or prior to 2023, because really since he got here, Trey Turner's been more of like a sellout power hitter.
Yeah.
And if you're leading him off, you want more of the 310 stolen base machine Trey Turner.
That's what Phillies fans have been wanting to see. I got a question for you, dude. I know it's been kind of talked about over the last few seasons. Obviously, people have been clamoring for Trey to lead off, but then they've also kind of mentioned Bryson Stott's name in there. I know Bryson Stott, you know, we'll probably see him 6, 7, you know, maybe 8. But is there a chance that we maybe see Bryson Stott lead off some days more than most than what's expected?
I don't think so, and it's not because the Phillies don't believe Stott can do the job, but it's because of the left-handed situation. If you lead Stott off, it pushes guys like Harper and Schwarber too far down the lineup, because you're not going to bat 3 consecutive lefties. You're also not going to bat 3 lefties out of 4. So if you did lead Stott off, that probably means Schwarber's going all the way down to 5. And at that point, you're losing too much. You know, that batting 5 for Schwarber versus batting 4 might be the difference between having a plate appearance and having that 5th plate appearance in a game and not. So the only way I would see Stott leading off is if Stott is just having a fantastic season, right? Or if, you know, injuries dictate that the Phillies have fewer lefties at the top of their order at a particular time. But we talked to Bryson Stott on Monday, and it was a good conversation with him, because it was the first time that he acknowledged in full all the pain he was dealing with in his elbow last season. And, you know, it now makes a lot more sense why Bryson Stott's batting average dropped by 40 points and his OPS plummeted and his plate selection decreased and his ability to use all fields wasn't there. It's because he was compensating for pain that he was feeling every time he would be out in front of a pitch. You know, he said that when he made contact, he didn't feel any pain, but when he was like out in front of a changeup, that's when the feeling would come. And, you know, Rob Thompson said that it's just natural that when you have that kind of, when you're dealing with that kind of nagging pain, you decelerate a little bit in your swing. You're thinking more when you're at the plate. And so, I mean, that's going to make Bryson Stott kind of an interesting player to monitor in spring training and in the beginning part of the regular season, because in 2023, he looked like an all-star in the making, like a top defensive second baseman who's going to be able to hit 280 with like a decent on-base percentage, and the power was starting to develop a little bit to that like 15 to 17 home run range. And, you know, there's still that ability for Bryson Stott. He's still a young player, still, you know, years of cost control for the Phillies, and a key player as they look for some internal improvement from some of their own guys.
Yeah, and he still had an unbelievable season in the field, Bryson Stott did. Moving to second base there, ever since Trey, you know, from shortstop to second base since Trey's gotten there, and he had a great season in the field. But yeah, when Rob Thompson said those comments at his end of the season press conference, it kind of shocked me a little bit. I didn't know what Bryson Stott's struggles were last year, but now to hear that it, you know, whatever was tweaking on with his elbow or whatever it was, it kind of makes a lot more sense. And obviously you'll hear that sound on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com and our social media channels at some point today or throughout the week, just to get Stott's comments on that. But yeah, it's an interesting development. Another interesting development that has been going on over the weekend is some position players getting some time in the outfield. I know Rob Thompson last week kind of joked about, not even joked about, but mentioned that JT Realmuto could get some time in left field. Until that happens, I'll believe it when I see it. But the big name is Edmundo Sosa. He's got time in center field and in left field over the last few seasons, just a few innings though. Could we see Edmundo Sosa be an outfield candidate this season? I know, like you mentioned in our last podcast, there's not too many position battles going on, but we could see Edmundo Sosa maybe in center field.
Yeah, so I'll start with JT first. So Rob Thompson, as as spring training began, as pitchers and catchers reporter, Rob Thompson told us that, he floated the idea to JT about, taking fly balls in left field. And it's just an idea at this stage. And the reason I say that is because when we talked to JT about it the next day, his reaction sure made me think that it's not going to happen. He kind of like laughed about it. And he said, yeah, that's what it is. It's an idea. I think that's what he said. Thompson's thing was he's such an athletic player, Realmuto, that this could be a way to ease his load behind the plate. And it could also get another right-handed bat in the lineup, because the Phillies have a lot of left-handed bats in their outfield, and Kepler and Marsh. But the reason that I am skeptical of it is that the point of it is to get JT Realmuto out from behind the plate, is to reduce the wear and tear, to allow him to be on the field more, right, and be healthier come October. But if he's learning a new position and he's running around in the outfield, I don't think that serves that purpose. You're not going to be having as much wear and tear as getting into the squat for 3 hours a game, but you're still, running around intensely and learning the position. So, I like you said, I'll believe that when I see it. Now, Edmundo Sosa, much more realistic. And it's not just left field. As you mentioned, Rob Thompson's going to try to get Sosa some work in center field here in spring training as well. And the rationale there is, if Edmundo Sosa is able to take to that position, that gives the Phillies a much more capable right-handed platoon option with Brandon Marsh in center field. Because Johan Rojas, he's a right-handed hitter, so he would theoretically start against lefties in center field. But he's, offense obviously is not Rojas' strong suit, and he's not much better against lefties than Marsh has been against lefties. Whereas Edmundo Sosa has actually done damage in his career against opposite-handed pitching, like an 800-ish OPS. He was very good against lefties last season. And something that's always stuck out to me with Sosa when he plays shortstop is that when he goes back on pop-ups over his shoulder, everything's a can of corn for him. Sometimes you see infielders really struggle when they look up into the sun, look up into the lights, and have to catch a difficult pop-up, but it's never really been the case for Sosa. So that would lead me to believe that he would be able to, catch fly balls in center field.
Yeah, because when Sosa took over for Trey, when he went on that long IL stint, he was hot. He was hot on the plate. He was hot in the field. He was doing everything right. And then, as you mentioned in your story on NBC Sports Philadelphia.com, they just didn't really have the options to do that, to play him in center and play him in left. So that's an interesting development, especially, like we said in the last pod. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so last summer, the Phillies they wanted to try out that experiment of Sosa in left field because Trey Turner missed 6 weeks with a hamstring strain. And when Turner came back, Sosa was so hot that they wanted to keep Sosa's bat in the lineup. But then it just never really materialized because the Phillies needed Sosa at so many other spots. They needed him at shortstop. They needed him at third base. So it just wasn't they didn't want to wear him out. And that's the case again this year. Like, Sosa's not going to do outfield drills every single day. I asked Rob Thompson that earlier. He said it's probably going to be 3 out of 4 days for him. But, an important player. If they can get him to feel comfortable in center, he becomes like a super utility player, and that has a lot of value, even
Correct.
More value than what Sosa's given the Phillies.
Exactly. And I think it's come across on the pod, especially over the last year, that I'm a big Edmundo Sosa guy, man. I love Sosa. I would love to see him get some more playing time. And even when Trey was coming back, last year, we were kind of like, oh, I wonder if they're going to get some more playing time for Edmundo. I don't know what they were going to do. So, like you said, Johan Rojas, obviously he had the winter ball experiment down, in the Dominican, right? I believe it was in the Dominican Republic.
He played Rojas played in the Dominican Winter League and had a really good run. Yeah. And that's not something to just gloss over because there's good talent there. It's not like you're playing single A competition. There's a lot of like major leaguers that participate in that Winter League. And Rojas, I think it was like 295-ish with decent on base.
I think he won Rookie of the Year.
The Phillies don't. The Phillies don't care about him hitting for power or hitting 300. They just need him to be like capable offensively. If Johan Rojas could hit 260 with a 320 on base percentage, that's that's a good major league player because of his defense and speed.
He just hasn't done that yet, though, right?
Right. He did it his rookie year. His rookie year, he exceeded everybody's expectations offensively, and that was never realistic either. I think he had like 302 as a rookie, and he knew that wasn't going to remain consistent, but they just need him to not be like a zero at the plate. But, the Sosa thing, it could open up more possibilities for the Phillies, because like if Sosa does take to center field, maybe you don't need Johan Rojas on the opening day roster. Maybe the Phillies say, okay, let's play him every day at AAA, see if the bat develops. They could also say, even if Sosa takes to the position, that they want Johan Rojas on the opening day roster as a speed demon and defensive replacement. So, either way, good problem to have. Give yourself some more versatility. But it's all kind of a conversation because the Phillies are so left-handed. Kepler, Marsh, Harper, Schwarber, Stott. That's on some days you're gonna have 6 guys batting from that side. So just something to consider.
For sure. Transition real quick, going back to the guy we were just talking about too. Another guy getting a DH, former left fielder, Kyle Schwarber, getting some time at first base. They said the Phillies want to give themselves another option if Bryce gets hurt, and I'm excited to see Bryce finally have a full season at first base. Obviously, he was kind of working on it last season in spring training, had that full season, but now he doesn't have to worry about learning that new position. I have a prediction for down the road, maybe at the season prediction pod, but with Bryce. But yeah, so Kyle Schwarber getting some time, like 3 times a week so far at first base.
Yeah, the Phillies, it sounds like it's going to be like every other day that they're going to work him out at first base, Kyle Schwarber. Several reasons for this. A, it gives them another option if Harper misses time with injury or if Harper needs a day off. But also, they're going to need to get Schwarber in the field more, period, this season, because they're going to want to get JT Realmuto more DH days. They're going to want to get Harper more DH days. So this gives Schwarber the ability that he can play left field or he can play first base if he feels comfortable there. He hasn't played first base since 2021. He played 9 games there with the Red Sox in the postseason, kind of got thrust into that duty. And he joked about it with us the other day. He was saying, they were doing everything they could just to get me out there to feel like I could just catch the ball, like just do the basic things. Whereas now he's going to have a full spring working with Bobby Dickerson over at first base. And, one of the reasons too that the Phillies are going to try to get Schwarber some more time in the field here is because he's in a contract year, and they want to try to do him that solid, as long as it's not affecting them on the field. But a player plays more in the field, he plays more games, it increases his value a little bit. You don't hit free agency as like a strictly DH. That again is a reason why the Phillies don't want to sit JT Realmuto too much either, because they're cognizant of the fact that he's in a walk year as well. And speaking of that, we talked to Schwarber about the contract status, and he said that he's open to an extension. He's not really putting any sort of deadline on it. When we asked him, would you set a deadline of the regular season? His response was well, I don't really know, because I've never kind of been through something like this. I don't really know but he is loving life as a Philly. I mean, he's become the leader of this clubhouse, and it just feels like Kyle Schwarber's team. I mean, not that he's the face of the franchise, Bryce Harper is, but you walk around, he's almost like he feels like the godfather of that team, whether it's with the rookies or with the veterans or with players they've just acquired. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Phillies got something done with Schwarber, but it could also linger until free agency. They have extended Zach Wheeler last year around this time. They extended Aaron Nola several months before that. And there's definitely a desire on the Phillies' part to keep Schwarber in the fold because he's been so important on and off the field.
The Godfather quote is one of the better ones. He really is, man. When you're around these guys, everyone just kind of gravitates that. And, we've heard Buddy Kennedy and some of these younger guys, even Weston Wilson, come up and say they've kind of relied on Kyle Schwarber's wisdom and just his knowledge of the game and kind of just being a baseball player and a human being as well. And like you said, man, it kind of seems like Kyle Schwarber, obviously he won the World Series with the Cubs in 2016. Big deal. But I don't know, when you look back, I don't know if they're going to look at Kyle Schwarber as a Philly or a Cub. I'm assuming a Cub, but it is an interesting way to kind of look at things, especially if they can extend him.
I was actually thinking about that this morning, that if they do extend him, Schwarber might end up retiring as a Philly, right? Ending his career as a Philly, and he'll probably end up having played more seasons here than any other city. But at the same time, as I was thinking about that, is that going to make him feel like his baseball identity is more so a Philly? He's won everywhere he's gone, so there's that too. Yeah, right. But I think that just speaks to A, how talented he is, and B, what kind of guy he is. That he's been 3 different places that have felt like home to him. That he's been able to have a lot of success. Exactly,
and I hope there can be an extension down the road, and yeah, man, that'd be crazy. And obviously, like you mentioned earlier too, JT Realmuto obviously available for extension. That could get done here shortly as well. I think some comments that real quick, and then we'll keep it moving here. But the comments from Nick Castellanos over the weekend on him representing himself. Got rid of the Scott Boras. He was a Scott Boras client. Now is representing himself. And, I saw him talking to you guys, kind of saying that like he kind of likes it more now. And that's what he felt comfortable going to Dave Dombrowski when his name started getting brought up in these trade rumors during the offseason. He felt comfortable enough to go to Dave right away instead of going through either Scott Boras or someone on the Scott Boras team and being like, hey, are these rumors true? Yes or no? And I thought that was pretty interesting. What were your takeaways from Nick on his comments and now representing himself?
Yeah, so we knew that he reached out to Dombrowski directly during the offseason to see if those rumors were true. I didn't realize that part of that was because he was also representing himself. When the Phillies were at Dodger Stadium last August, Castellanos had a conversation with Scott Boras and just told him that he wanted to represent himself. He said it's nothing against Boras core, no malice there, that they did a great job for him, but that he's just at a stage of his career where he wants to be able to speak for himself. He doesn't want to have to go through intermediaries. Also, you have to consider the fact that he's under contract. It's not like a guy's negotiating a new deal now. So if he was negotiating a new deal, maybe he would have an agent. Most athletes want the agent because it resolves some awkwardness when you're negotiating with the team. And also it can get you more money. So Castellanos said that. He also had an interesting takeaway from how the Phillies season ended. He said that he heard and saw everything for 8 days after the season ended, the wildly negative reaction. And he said for him, it didn't piss him off, that it just kind of like it almost stripped all the pressure away, that it felt freeing, that, all of a sudden this team that there were enormous expectations on and everybody's looking at like, you must win a World Series or bust. Now, all of a sudden people are talking about this team like it stinks. And so his comment was, now they have the ability to sneak up on some people. Now, if they win, it's a pleasant surprise. And if they lose, his comment was, then you guys look smart, which I don't think anybody really cares about that. But Castellanos' point, I think, was that Phillies win 95 games. They're talked about most of the season as like a juggernaut. And then it goes really south and they lose. And it's like all of a sudden, all anybody talks about was the bad. And that's just how it is in sports. I mean, you remember a few years ago when Reese Hoskins said, like, acknowledge the positives too. And everybody's like, well, that's not how sports work. Like, if you lose, people, I think from an athlete's perspective, though, it's kind of startling sometimes how extreme the reactions can be both ways, positive and negative. I think also sometimes athletes might conflate like the responses they see from fans on social media to what's actually being written. But yeah, I thought that was a unique takeaway, because the Phillies have definitely reached a point here over the last couple of years where the regular season barely even matters because all anybody thinks about is the playoffs. And that's not the place you want to be as a fan, in my opinion. Like, I think back to before I started covering sports, like when I was 2007, 2008, that era when I was just a fan. 2007, the reason it was so much fun is because you didn't have the expectation. And even the same thing in 2008. But then as soon as you win it all, and as soon as it becomes like you must win the World Series or you're a failure, then wins don't feel good. Wins are just a relief. Like, okay, you were supposed to win. It's a sigh of relief. And the losses hurt so much more. Maybe the fact that everybody's talking about the Dodgers and thinking the Dodgers are going to steamroll through the NL, maybe that could help the Phillies in 2025.
Which is crazy because, in 2022, obviously, everything that happened, the kind of came out of nowhere, got hot at the right time, just like the Mets did last season. It is crazy, man. And I was thinking about that actually driving in here today. It's just, that was 3 years ago, right? That 2022 season was 3 years ago. And that was kind of the time where I was like, all right, this team, all right, yeah, they got close. They were up 2-1 in the World Series against the dynasty at the time with the Houston Astros. Couldn't get the job done. 2023 comes around. It's like, all right, revenge season. They get to the NLCS and fail. Then in 2024, they win the division. They win 95 games, and then they can't get out of the NLDS. So,
I asked Rob Thompson the other day, like, you've now had the great first half. You've had the great second half. You've had the great playoff run. And so last year, you remember there was a lot of talk about that the Phillies wanted to get off to a hot start because they had gotten off to slow starts prior to 2024, and then needed to claw their way back. And so last season they got out to the really hot start. And so I asked him, now having done that, having seen that it doesn't strictly then lead to success, do you have it? Is there anything you want to do differently this year? The Phillies still want to get out to a hot start. They don't want to change anything like that, but I don't think you're going to see. I'm hesitant to say that, but I don't think that the Phillies are going to prioritize getting guys to 200 innings, or they're going to prioritize sending a guy out for a complete game.
Yeah.
Maybe if a guy's really cruising, but those kinds of things are just not nearly as important anymore. And,
Yeah.
I remember like Rob Thompson was really leery of, you remember Michael Lorenzen when he pitched that no-hitter 2 seasons ago, he was leery of letting him finish it because it just does something to a pitcher when you let a guy finish a game like that, because people don't do it anymore. And it does. It really does. And so for that reason, like, you might see more 5 and dives, or you might see more 6-inning outings and it's 78 pitches, whereas a year ago, Ranger Suarez would have kept going. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but health is paramount. And, winning the division doesn't guarantee success. Winning 100 games doesn't guarantee success. What puts you in the best position is just being healthy at the end of the year.
Yep. And it's been said over the last 3 months, you don't win the World Series in April. You don't win the World Series in May. You win the World Series in October and November. And that's what they have to do this season. And I know, like you said, everyone's been saying like the window's closing. Obviously, these guys are getting up there in age, but that's why we're going to see some of these different looks on things. We're seeing Sosa in center. We might see JT Realmuto in left field. We might see Kyle Schwarber at first base, just to give these guys a rest, because knock on wood, they've been healthy to a point, especially the starting rotation. They've been very healthy over the last few seasons. Obviously, Bryce Harper's had his problems. Trey Turner has had some IL stints as well. But it's just getting to the finish line and getting hot when they need to get hot. Because obviously that small collapse in the second half last season, they were like 60-32 or some point at one point, and cruising, and then all of a sudden the brakes hit fast. Hopefully this season is a little different. We'll wrap up real quick. Just some prospect talks, dude. Completely different transition here. But yeah, it looks like Aidan Miller was getting some love or getting some reps at shortstop today. And over the weekend. What can you tell us about some of the prospects that you've seen so far, including Andrew Painter, who talked the other day, and kind of not really a quiet talk, but like he didn't really say much, just that he was excited. And Aaron Nola said that he was excited to see Painter as well.
Yeah, so Aidan Miller took batting practice and took ground balls at shortstop today in the first full squad workout day. There's a lot of excitement about Aidan Miller. Dave Dombrowski said last week that the Phillies are going to keep him at shortstop for the meantime because they have scouts who believe that he can stay there full time. So he's definitely a guy that we're going to, want to look at the playing time that he does get during spring training if he gets into Grapefruit League games, because Aidan Miller in a couple years might be, batting 6th for the Phillies and playing shortstop or third base. Really high on base percentages so far during his minor league career, first round pick, and a guy that the Phillies have held out of trade talks for really good players because of how much they believe in him. Andrew Painter, I've said this on the last podcast, but he looks big and strong. It's really stuck out to me with Painter and with Christopher Sanchez that they just both are enormous, man. And you want to have that kind of workhorse type of body as a pitcher if you're gonna be able to throw 180 to 200 innings. You don't want to be too muscular, but you definitely want to be able to withstand the rigors of a difficult season. And Andrew Painter, it also has stuck out that he just is really mature. He speaks like a veteran. There's no nervousness, and the Phillies fans aren't going to get a glimpse of him for a couple months now, because if he appears in the majors this season, it's going to be in the middle of the summer, June, July, August, somewhere around there. But has the potential to really help this team. And, the other guy I had a chance to speak to on Monday morning was Mick Abel, who's kind of like I don't know, he goes under the radar now because there's so he goes under the radar now because there's so much attention on Painter and on Aidan Miller and on Justin Crawford, who was here today. And even guys like Moises Chassé and Gene Cabrera have almost gone ahead of Abel potentially on the organizational depth chart. But Abel was added to the 40-man roster this past offseason to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. He's really struggled with walks in the minor leagues. And the key for him this year, his focus is just on keeping things more simple. He's really trying to just, he acknowledges that he thinks too much and that he tries too hard. And he'll be in the middle of a bullpen session thinking about his hand placement or thinking about the way the last pitch moved and how can he get it to move different. And he said he just needs to trust his natural ability, that he needs to get back to, what it was like as a kid when the natural ability took over and he pitched. He trusted his stuff. He trusted his fastball and breaking ball. And this is a huge year for Mick Abel because he needs to improve the control. It's not just command, it's control. It's being able to throw strikes. And if he does that, perhaps he gets a cup of coffee at some point this season or as a spot starter. Way too young to give up on, high school arm. I think it's promising, the fact that a guy right out of high school was able to, reach triple digits in innings a few years in a row. He's really made almost every single start, has Mick Abel, over the last few seasons. And he said that was also a learning process for him, that his first year out of high school, he threw 40 innings and his shoulder hurt. Whereas now he knows how to, maintain his body throughout a long season. So much attention on Andrew Painter. People forget that Mick Abel was drafted in the middle of the first round the year before and was regarded as the best high school pitcher in that draft. So still a lot of upside if he can figure things out. Yeah.
And I think that whatever he is thinking about more, I'm sure that comes. I mean, he's 23, he'll be 24 in August. I'm sure that comes with it, right? Where you were this highly talented pitching prospect that was drafted, like you said, high middle round, in 2020, I believe. And then all of a sudden, the next year they draft Andrew Painter, who's now this big up and coming next big prospect. And I'm sure that kind of weighs on Mick a little bit. And it's kind of a shame that he's kind of been forgotten a little bit, but I would love to see Mick Abel thrive, because there's talks when they drafted Painter and Abel that that's the rotation future, right? That's the future of the rotation. That's the next Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola down the stretch. And Mick just hasn't figured it out yet, but he's only 23. There's a lot of time. We'll hopefully see Mick Abel here in the near future. But yeah, man, are you staying? Are you getting a little beefy this offseason too, like Sanchez and Painter? Are you hitting the gym a little bit? Or I am not in the best shape of my life.
It's funny. It's like, spring training it's for me, it's the most difficult time to stay in shape, because you wake up every day at 6 a.m. You get back to your hotel. It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're just wiped out from being in the sun all day. So any thought you had of, using the hotel treadmill or going for a run or something like that, I usually excuse myself. So when I get back up north, that's when I get back into good shape, I guess.
That's right, baby. Yeah, there's late night games, and by the time we're wrapping up, and then you get to sleep in a little bit, and you got some time before you have to be back at the ballpark. So that's when your time start to beef up and hit the treadmill a little bit. So
yeah, but at Phillies camp, everything is tip top so far. Everybody is reported except for Trey Turner, personal reason, but they are expecting him to arrive in Clearwater on Tuesday and take a physical on Wednesday. Nice. Bryce Harper and Aaron Nola missed Monday because of a illness, but again, they don't think it's anything serious. You remember last year the Phillies had that illness spread throughout their clubhouse. It knocked out like 24 players. So they definitely want to avoid that, because that honestly set them back a little bit. But so far so good down here in Clearwater, and Spence and I will be back throughout the week.
That sounds good to me, buddy. Yeah, we'll catch you guys at some point this week. I mean, games the first game is on the 22nd here, so 5 days away. Phillies baseball will be back on your TV, I think, on the 23rd on Sunday at NBC Sports Philadelphia. So for Corey Seidman down in Clearwater, I'm Spencer McKercher up here in cold and windy Philadelphia. Hopefully get down there soon, but we'll talk to you guys shortly.